Here. Welcome to Washington City Hall. We're in the council chamber for our regular council meeting. Today is Wednesday, October 23rd. Our meetings are also streamed live and archived at washingtoncity.org/meetings. We appreciate our relationship with the Interfaith Council, and we welcome Chaplain Kurt Sorwide with the Southland Bible Church. Chaplain, come forward. Get us started.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And I have to say, it's really nice to meet all of you. I told Mayor that I live in Bloomington, and obviously I don't get up here very often, even though my church is Southland Bible Church, kind of right across the freeway from here. And I noticed you have In God We Trust up there, and I thought that was very nice. So I don't know how many of you got into that Trump train last night or heard about it, but it was awesome. And I actually said the prayer there last night, and I normally don't even do this kind of thing, but it was really crazy last night. I don't know, but a lot of people, a lot of enthusiasm, whether you're a Trump supporter or not. There was a lot of enthusiasm, and I enjoyed it. I'm ready to open in prayer here, and I just wanted to say good evening to all of you, and it is a pleasure to be here. Heavenly Father, I pray that you will guide our mayor, city council, and staff as they meet and discuss matters with regard to our city. I pray they shall choose to do that which is moral and rational. I pray that their motivation is everything they want to do for the good of the public and not their own. I pray that they will be able to solve the city's problems and make good policies and address them. Help them to be competent and excellence in their governance. Most of all, I pray that these council people and all that are here tonight who don't know your son Jesus will get to encounter him, surrender their lives to him, and live a life that glorifies you, God. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
God bless you guys. Have a great night. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chaplain. Really appreciated your prayer. I've invited Councilman Brett Henderson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman.
Thank you. Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I call for a motion to approve the agenda, I'll make note that Councilman Belliston, I believe, is traveling but has made accommodations to attend electronically when he's able to get on. And I will also note, Council, that we do have need to go to closed session for items 12A and 12B, which is purchase, exchange, or lease of property and pending or potential litigation. That said, I turn to you for a motion to approve the agenda.
Mayor, if I may, real quickly, Steve with IT has informed us that Councilman Belliston is in the Zoom link.
Wonderful. Are you there, Councilman?
I am. I just had you guys on mute so I don't bother anybody.
Welcome. Okay, Council, I'll turn to you for a motion to approve the agenda as outlined.
Mayor, I'll make that motion to approve the agenda for October 23rd, 2024.
We have a motion by Councilman Coates.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved unanimously. A few announcements of items between now and our next council meeting. On October 28th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. is the annual Trunk or Treat at the Washington City Community Center. And that is always a fun event with a lot of dressed up residents in attendance. November 2nd at 11 a.m. is the Battle of the Badges Chili Cook-Off. And this year it's moving over to Vernon Worthen Park in St. George. We wish our police and firefighters the best of luck on that. On Wednesday, November 6th at 5 p.m., council, if you'd like to assist with setting up the field of flags here at Veterans Park, you're invited to do so. The public is also welcome for any that would like to help with that. On Thursday, November 7th, we will be, the council, this is for you too, elementary school kids will be putting the markers and flags on the headstones of the veterans at our cemetery, and you're invited to attend as well. Saturday, November 9th at 9 a.m. is the crop walk, and Councilman Casperson, I believe that starts down at the park. I forget what it's called down in Bloomington Hills. I can't remember the name of the park. It might be on Larkspur Drive or something. No, they don't start at St. James. I want to say it's off Larkspur, but I could be wrong. Anyway, if you want to go check into that, where the crop walk is, that's going to be on November 9th. That's a Saturday at 9 a.m. And then on Monday, November 11th, the county-wide tribute for Veterans Day will be right here in the heart of Washington City. It'll start at 11 a.m. with the parade. They will go along the parade route from 300 and then along Telegraph, followed by a short program in tribute to our veterans in the park. And we invite veterans from all around the community to be here and residents who are proud to be American. I will say that as an old artilleryman myself, I'm not the only one up here, we may have arranged to have one of the new Paladin howitzers on display. So that'll be kind of cool. We're hopeful that that'll come through. It'll be parked right here on the corner of Main and Telegraph. Council, are there any announcements that I may have missed this evening? Great. We'll go on to item 3. This is declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Council, anything that any of you would like to declare or any items you'd like to abstain on?
Yeah, item 5A, I will abstain from.
Duly noted. Thank you, Councilman. Anything else?
Can I just say the crop walk is at the Larkspur Park?
Perfect. Larkspur Park. Wonderful. Okay, so I've got the one abstention noted. We'll move on to item 4, the consent agenda, which is light. It consists of the approval of the minutes from the city council meeting of 10/9/24. I'm happy to entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, I did read through those and they looked accurate to me, so I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor? Any opposed? Did we get you, Councilman Belliston?
Aye. Yeah, I said it. I just was on mute.
We have a unanimous approval of the consent agenda. Moving along to item 5, this is award of bid. Consideration to award the bid for the Washington City Storm Drain Project and Detention Pond Project to Feller Enterprises in the amount of $395,121.43. I'll invite the city engineer, Paul Mogul, to present to the council on this bid. Mr. Mogul, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you as well. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. On Wednesday, October 16th at 3 p.m., the bids for this project were open and read aloud publicly at the Public Works Building. We had 7 bidders put in on this project, with Feller Enterprises being the low bid at $395,121.43. Staff recommends approval of this bid, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for the city engineer?
So I think we're all at least a little bit familiar with Feller Enterprise, good local company. They've done work for us in the past and have a high success rate, on-time rate and all that.
Yep.
Is there anything you'd add to that?
No, it was good to see that we had quite a few bidders put in on it, so that kept the price a lot lower than we were anticipating.
Yeah.
We call that capitalism. A little bit. Competition, at least.
Yep, absolutely.
Further comment or discussion? If not, I'm happy to entertain a motion to award the bid to Feller Enterprises on this project in the amount of $395,121.43.
Mayor, I can make that motion, that we award the bid for the Washington City Storm Drain Project and Detention Pond project to Feller Enterprises in the amount of $395,121.43.
Thank you, Councilman Henderson. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Councilwoman Casperson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The bid is awarded as stated in the motion.
And Mayor, I'll just, for the record, I'm abstaining from that vote.
Councilman Coates did abstain on that particular item. Moving on to item 6. 6A is consideration to approve the reuse authorization contract between Washington City and the Washington County Water Conservancy District. City Attorney Thad Sigmiller will present to the council on this item. Mr. Sigmiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to screen mirror here so I can share some of the information that's been provided to us from the Water Conservancy District. Council Room 2. There we go. So I'm going to start, but before we look at the contract, I'm going to just review some of the information that the Water District's staff have provided to us about the reuse system. This first one you see is it's a large area map. Washington City is still in the same place it's always been. You'll see on that map, this big green spot is the Warner Valley Reservoir, planned for a future project. Its main purpose is to store reuse water and secondary water. It's not super clear on the monitors, but you'll see a yellow line that kind of squiggles from the Bloomington area, which is where our current sewer treatment plant is. And it squiggles kind of south along the Southern Parkway and up through St. George and Washington over to Hurricane. And you'll see at Hurricane, there's a green box and a blue box. Those are two new water treatment plants that are proposed to be built as part of the regional system. One would be a advanced water treatment plant for culinary type water. The other would be an advanced wastewater treatment plant to get it to a type 1 reuse water. And so that's kind of the spine, the backbone of the reuse concept that the Water District is planning. This contract tonight is necessary as part of that. You'll notice that Lavera can also get a wastewater treatment plant. So not all of the sewage from the east of the county will end up in Hurricane. Some of it will end up in Lavera, and that secondary water will end up in the new reservoir that's being filled there by Tokerville right now. Any questions about that first map and slide? It's just a concept of regionalizing and moving reuse water, which currently is coming out of those two sites, the Ash Creek site by the Hurricane sewer ponds and the St. George treatment site. Both of those discharge the sewer effluent into the river and it runs downstream. This plan is to utilize the discharge waters from the sewer treatment plants to bring them back into a reservoir system, and those would be primarily what we are reusing. These are slides. They're not in a slideshow right now. I just rendered them to PDF for the purposes of your packet, but I'll scroll through them, that were produced by the Water Conservancy District, and so I'm just repeating what they've told me. They've got 5 sources that they look at for their 20-year plan. One of those sources is water conservation. They view it as a source because we'll just use our current water better. Another is reuse water, which is what I was describing on that prior one. Another one is new development of existing water sources that just haven't been developed. The other is maximizing the groundwater rights that the cities and the district hold around the area. There's some belief that they can be pumped in different and better ways so that more water is able to be withdrawn from the aquifer than we currently do. And the 5th one is agricultural conversion. That conversion is largely the conceptual in that reuse water would then be provided to the ag users in exchange for the ag users providing their fresh water, their snowmelt water, their river water to the reservoir system that produces culinary water. This next graph shows you the percentages of those 5. This big blue half, 53% of the 20-year plan is reuse water. And so I think that's instructive to just show how important the reuse plan is. 53% of that is, 53% of the next 2 decades' water sources are conceptualized to be reuse water. 26% there, the orange is, or 24% is in conservation. And I think we've all seen as our communities kind of embraced conservation, we've seen how that can be really impactful if we embrace it. 10% is new sources, 6% is groundwater, and 7% is ag conversion. So really, 50% or more of our future water sources are going to be water that gets reused. A lot of metrics and details here. I'll skip through that one. It's essentially they produce these bar graphs of what's needed and where it's coming from into the next 2 decades. This is a really simplified diagram of showing how it all works, but essentially the sewer discharge water will be piped into an advanced wastewater treatment plant that'll get it to what they call a type 1 reuse water, which would then be put into one of the culinary reservoirs like Sand Hollow or Quail. And from there, it would be pulled out and treated for culinary in the culinary treatment system. And that's the end of the slides. So I'll take you to the contract now itself, not the briefing doc. Let's get you to the contract. This contract is uniform between all of the cities that are members of the Regional Water Supply Agreement. The attorneys from all of those cities have worked on this over the summer months. You'll see that those yellow highlights are just for us to input Washington City's name. The first recital there, recital E, the Water District in cooperation with Washington City and regional partners are building a regional reuse purification system. So that's the purpose of this contract is we're building a regional system and we need a contract to explain some of the rights. Letter G, the city has entitlements to the beneficial use of water, which will end up in this system. And so right now the city has 2 types of culinary water that we serve. Some of it comes through the regional water line, which is district water that is sold to us. But some of it comes from our wells, which are city water rights. And so any of those portions of culinary that end up in the sewer treatment plant, the city has a remainder interest in those and a right in those. And so a big portion of what this contract is doing is authorizing the district to receive and handle the waters that come from our well sources. And also then the second half of what this contract does is we tell the district that we will receive the reuse water back from them and we'll administer it on a retail basis as a secondary source to our customers, much like we do retail culinary source to our customers. Letter M here, delivery and beneficial use of the city water rights, the district water supplies and all of this. So basically another statement that we're doing all of this so that we can work together and get better beneficial results from the water supplies for the citizens. A lot of the stuff in the contract, the definitions, I'm not gonna read through those. I'm gonna have to download this so I can keep scrolling through it. Of course.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, Councilman.
So, have they given any indication as far as timeline, as far as when this whole thing may be operational with the reservoir and the pumping systems and pipelines and things?
So what I can tell you is that it's likely that the remaining property that needs to be purchased for Warner Valley that's planned to close in 2025. That's going to be a bit of a land exchange plus financial consideration. I know they're working now to obtain the easements and things necessary for the pipeline, as Thad showed. I can't say that I know a tight timeline on it, but I can tell you that based on the importance to the 20-year plan, this is priority number one right now with regional water supply.
So we may see some good progress 5-6 years and then maybe see it fully operational in 10 years,
Yeah,
possibly, something like that.
My understanding is the second decade of the 2 decades is when they expect reuse to be actively providing water. They're looking at the new sources, the groundwater optimization and conservation is kind of the first decade, because those don't require BLM approval like they've got going on at the different reservoirs in Ivans, at Warner Valley Reservoir. Don't require the construction of significant, sophisticated treatment plants and pipelines. And so, yeah, I think the second decade is more of the reuse concept.
Thank you.
Also, the Warner Valley Lake is going to be critical to our own irrigation system. It's going to be a major component, so it's critical that it's good that it's in our backyard because we're gonna need it, so.
Agree. Good points.
I was teasing the district. I said, the county brings their trash to Washington City, and they're gonna bring all their reuse water to Washington City as well. We'll be happy to host it here and, support the concept of trying to use what we've got as good as we can. You'll see paragraph 1 there, reuse authorization. This is a term where Washington City, if the council approves this, authorizes pursuant to the state reuse authorization, reuse act, the city council would authorize the district to handle our reuse water on our behalf. Don't get mixed up on the numbering. I'm still working with the attorney there because the numbering doesn't quite follow numerically. Permitting here, I wanted to point that out. In this section, the city agrees that it will permit and build at its cost the retail side of the secondary water system. And the water district agrees that it'll permit and build at its cost the reuse facilities in the regional system. And so just 2 important terms there that, again,
So when you say they'll build, they're gonna deal with the reuse infrastructure, but I just don't want it to hinder us from being able to do what we need to do on our irrigation system.
So they're building the regional part of the reuse. We're
The
building
main lines, the pump stations,
the
dam,
treatment
the
pads,
lakes.
the reservoirs, the lakes,
Yeah, and we will deal with tanks and
the retail side.
transmission lines and stuff like that. And none of this contract will hinder us from doing what we need to do.
Correct. If anything, this contract obligates us to do what we need to do. It's gonna have a provision that says we shall take from them reuse water. And so we need to probably prepare for what we need to do so that we're ready when it's available. Number 5 has similar terms, but adds the construction. It says the city, you'll see there, Councilman, letter A, city shall design, permit, construct, and install at its sole cost all of its municipal system, right? And so, again, it's our responsibility, but it's also our decision as to what we design and build. And then a similar paragraph for them. Inspection, that gives both parties an equal right to inspect each other's systems. And the main reason is, our water department's gonna need to be able to connect to their pipes, and theirs are gonna need to connect to us. And so both sides have the ability to, come in and look what we're building. O&M, this is basically saying the same concept. The city will handle all O&M and repairs on the municipal system. The district will handle it all on the reuse facilities and system. Number 8, delivery points and parties' facilities. This is interesting, but Washington City and the district are gonna have to decide where the pipeline to deliver reuse water to the system shall go. I assume that as we're studying our secondary water master plan, that we'll have some preference there, and so that our water department and theirs will have to decide where the pipes will connect and the meters will be installed. Number 10 was important to me. This clarifies that the city is not ceding ownership to the district, but rather we are exercising the ownership rights that we have in the water that we sell and ends up in those facilities, and we're authorizing the district to handle it on our behalf, but not to take ownership of it. The last one here, this concept will require that there be a change application filed with the state engineer on behalf of Washington City that would ask the Utah State Engineer to issue a new water right in the city's name and ownership that recognizes the remainder water that ends up in the sewer that's allocated to the city's well sources that recognizes that as a water source that the city has a right in, which if approved, and we anticipate it will be approved because it'll be a regional application on behalf of multiple cities at the same time. If approved, would be an additional water right that we would then have in our portfolio of water resources to use and administer in our city. And so that's important so that the rights are properly identified, but also it would result in another water right that we have currently. It goes, our residents flush, it goes to the trunk line to Bloomington, and then the Bloomington plant sells some of their water to golf courses and parks, and a lot of it just goes back into the river. This would be recapturing that water back as a resource for Washington City in the future. And then we get into a lot of the boilerplate that attorneys like, but the council may not be that interested in. There is still a question about the rates and what those will be. You'll notice in this contract, there's not a lot of definition on that yet, because it's hard to decide your rates before you've built your pipelines, right? But yeah, someday there will be a rate discussion, and the city would have a wholesale rate that we would buy. We would get an allocation for essentially a service fee of the water right that is ours that they're authorized to process for us. And then if we needed more, we would then have a wholesale rate for purchase of additional water. And so, again, those rates are, we know they're gonna need to be, they're needed, but nobody knows what their calculation will be at this point.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
At some point, it's going to be a substantial capital investment for us on the infrastructure for this. As far as paying for that, how does that work? I know that, probably can't use impact fees for that, at least on existing neighborhoods, but is there any kind of plan in place for that?
So you're correct. The city has not adopted a capital facilities plan and impact fee that is planning for secondary water system development. The city could choose to adopt one of those, and I think that's part of what's been under study through the water department is a secondary water master plan that may end up in a impact fee that would collect funds going forward. A lot of this, though, is things like Washington City has fairly substantial secondary water resources in our springs and our old irrigation system. It's hard to use an impact fee for an existing system, and that one's needing some modernization. It's probably an understatement there. The old basalt ditches might need to be updated.
You took the words out of my mouth.
They don't pressurize those well anymore. And so, Councilman, I think this council is going to need to wrestle with funding priorities and maybe what we've seen you do in prior years, seeking funding and grants or whatever we can find out there to help us as we try to modernize our water system.
Good question.
And I think you're right on that. And some of those things, we're gonna have to get help from the state. We're gonna have to get help from the Conservancy District. I mean, it's gonna be a joint effort between everyone to help get this reuse off the ground and working toward. But ultimately, it is very important to our growth to keep, so we can best utilize the current sources of water we do have.
I think what's interesting too is when you consider infrastructure and the costs of it, yeah, this is a major lift, but when you're trying to reuse, because if you looked at the graph, I think it's like 53% of our water is going to come from reuse. And we've got to put this in place now so that it's there when we need it. So it is a big lift, but it's something that I don't think you can argue with the need of it. It's just, yeah, water's going to be expensive, but we do live in the desert, so we're going to need it.
Yeah. So my request tonight, after presenting the information for the council and the slides for the public, is that if you're willing, that you would have a motion that would consider approval of this contract. I would make the edits to get the city name in there and get the numbering correct. And then if it's approved, we would then get those final edits made and get the mayor to sign it on behalf of the city and deliver it to the water district.
And Thad, you're comfortable with this? You were part of that process?
Yeah, we're the last city to approve it, and we weren't trying to be the last city. Washington City, I think, is recognized by the district as a willing participant in most of what they're doing, and usually one of the earlier, adopters. I don't know that there's a really good reason why we're the last ones, other than this is just how our timing's fallen. But yeah, the city attorneys have whittled away a few things. It originally had a statement in there that said, you know, none of the cities can buy any more water once they've signed this, and that ran into some trouble because, you know, cities that are responsible for delivering water don't really like the idea that they're told they can't, you know, buy something else if it's available. And so we've already, because we're the last ones to get it approved, some of the most troubling stuff's been filtered out along the way by other cities.
Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion. if you're
All right,
ready
is
for
there any
it.
further discussion?
I was just going to say that it's really good that we have you, Mayor, on that board as well, because we know that we're represented in the very, very well there, so.
Well, appreciate that. I'm happy to entertain a motion that to on this item, just making note of the minor edits that the city attorneys asked for.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the reuse authorization contract between Washington City and Washington County Water Conservancy District with the minor edits our attorney is going to make.
Have a motion by Councilman Coates. Is there a second?
Second that, Mayor.
Second by Councilman Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That appears to be unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Sigmiller. Item number 7. This is a consideration to write off uncollectible utilities debt from Bed Bath & Beyond in the amount of $12,205.60. I'll invite the city treasurer, Brittany McClellan, to present to the council and answer any questions on this item. Mrs. McClellan.
Mayor, can I ask for clarification? It says Bed-
Typo.
Oh, so it is
Bed Bath & Beyond.
not Best
Yeah, it's
Buy.
Bed Bath & Beyond.
I'm like, because aren't they still in business? Why aren't we?
Yeah, that one was a little old.
Okay.
No, Bed Bath & Beyond. They claimed bankruptcy back in 2023, and we have an uncollectible debt due to that. And anything over 5,000 does require council approval.
So the treasurer and I have monitored that bankruptcy just because we knew this was it's not a huge number from like, as you compare it to our annual budget, but it's a big number to write off as compared to our utility practices. And so we wanted to monitor that case just to make sure that we weren't, you know, writing something off too soon. Bed Bath & Beyond didn't have any money for unsecured creditors, so we think a year later that there's not much hope that it's.
Is this 1 month or multiple months? I'm just curious when they stop paying their bill.
$5,372.41 was their final bill before the collection. So that was uncollectible. And then the remaining $6,833.19 was their final bill with us after they moved out of the complex.
So this is an interesting process. The minute they filed bankruptcy, federal law imposed what's called the automatic stay, which is an automatic stop on collection of debts that existed at the time of the bankruptcy. And so part of this was the debt that existed then. Our challenge is they continued to operate for several months still. And so we had to create a post-bankruptcy account, which federal law allows us to take collection procedures on that. And so they paid some of that, but they also left some remainder on that too. And so
They continued to operate for about 6 months after the claim. And so this is about a month and a half of services.
as a matter of city staff preference, we weren't excited to go and, you know, shut them off. We thought that them continuing to operate was important to the city as well, so.
So if you're an individual and you write off, sometimes it means a benefit on your taxes, but to the city, there's no benefit in writing off utility accounts.
No.
Nope, this is just an amount that's uncollectible that, you know, on the averages of all the utility users, just has to get absorbed by the rate that the city council applies.
Well, council, it sounds like there's no alternative on this one. Anyone want to take a stab?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I'm not a happy one, but make a motion for a write-off of uncollectible Bed
Bed Bath and
Bed
Beyond.
Bath and Beyond utilities debt in the amount of $12,205.60.
We have a motion by Councilman Ivy. Is there a second?
Second.
second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution. This is consideration to approve a resolution authorizing compensation for service on the Board of Directors of the Utah Local Governments Trust. I was appointed to this board within the last 6 months or so, so you saw this resolution for 2024. This is a resolution that needs to come back for every year, and they like it done before the upcoming year, so this is for 2025 for my service on that board. So I'm happy to entertain a motion if there's no discussion on this item.
So moved, Mayor.
A motion by Councilman Coates,
Second that, Mayor.
second by Councilman Ivy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number 9, which is a discussion, 9A. This is a discussion regarding the airport overlay zone. City Attorney Thad Sigmiller had a quick break, and now he's back on the field.
Thank you, Mayor. You may notice that I'm not quite as passionate about airports as I am water, but I still think this is going to be a compelling production. So let's see what I can do here. I'm going to pull you back up. You'll see here a state code that was passed. You'll see at the top, effective January 1st, 2025. So this was passed by the February legislature of this year. It's called the Airport Zoning Regulations. And the beauty of it is that it applies to cities that don't have airports, in addition to those that do. And so we're a city that benefits from a regional airport, but it is not within our boundaries. We don't administer it. It's all under the authority of St. George City. The first statement here is it indicates essentially that there's risk and also that there's benefits. And so the legislature says, in order to, essentially protect airports and reduce hazards, a city shall adopt, administer, and enforce land use regulations for the airport influence area, including an airport overlay zone. And the agenda item tonight is an airport overlay zone. You'll notice also that they later say in paragraph 3, each political subdivision within an airport influence area, again, another shall notify a person building or developing land that they're in the airport influence area. Part of how we do that is already coming through the Planning and Development Department, which required notes on plats, as well as the applicants, Michelle, am I correct? They sign a document, right, where they acknowledge that they're in the airport area on the application? Yeah, I know. Anyway, and so part of what we're building out is how we notify everybody in this area. And then you'll notice again, to promote a safe and efficient operation, they also shall, and this one is adopt an airport overlay zone conforming to this chapter as well as the federal law. And then one more operative word, may, as a condition to granting a building permit, require them to grant or sell an navigation easement to the airport. So Jeremy and I were aware of this as it was proposed. We were aware of it as it got passed. And one thing in it is this number 4, which says, if a political subdivision doesn't adopt it, then there's an alternative, which is you still have to do all these things just without the overlay zone. And so we're trying today to beat this date, December 31st, 2024. If we don't make it, we just have to deal with the A, B, and C below it. But we feel like in light of some of the statements that St. George City representatives have made to us, they've kind of criticized the city for not adopting one yet, even though it's not required until, it's not effective till January of 2025. It's not required until December 31st. But we feel like because there is some of the airport influence area within our city, we should consider an overlay zone. This map is a map that our GIS department created for us. Utah state law says the airport influence area is that area which is within 5,000 feet of the airport runway. You won't be surprised that the legislature did not define the runway, And so in this one, there's what's the runway, and then there's also this second little taxiway over here. So we've requested, when I say we, the city attorney's office has requested that the St. George City and the legislature define better what the runway is, because if you're measuring 5,000 feet, it's a different line. So if you assume that the legislature thought that it would only be from the purple runway, then 5,000 feet is the purple perimeter that you see out there. And you'll notice there that takes in corners of what we call the Stuckey Farms development area, as well as the Freeport West development area. If you assume that that the 5,000 feet needs to go to the taxiway, you'll just push that out a little farther to the green line. And I had them do the green line through St. George City, just so you see that this influences St. George neighborhoods as much as it does ours. But what I'm proposing you consider tonight, as I interpret it today, would be the purple line. Everything within the purple line is what we would, if you pass this overlay zone, which essentially adds this as another zone type in the city code, the city then would at a later point bring an application to identify those little pieces that are within the city and within the purple line to actually label them the airport overlay zone, in addition to whatever their underlying zoning is.
So what's the consequences of that development? Now they have another process they gotta do because they have to, or is it just an acknowledgement that they know they're in the overlay zone?
It's not as bad as it sounds. So in the proposed zoning that I've got for you, there's a height limitation, but you'll see in there that it's 350 feet, which is a lot greater than what we already allow. And so our local limitations on height are already much more severe than the federal height limitations. It requires that they grant or sell an navigation easement for the air traffic above them, the traffic and the noise. As we've talked about this with a lot of different, interested parties, the Stuckey Farm development right purchasers, St. George City, I feel that most everybody already acknowledges that the flights are gonna happen there.
I agree with you. And I think looking at that, it's interesting, right? I live just northwest of there, right? When I bought my house, I'm like, hey, I'm not in the flight path. Every morning, 7 a.m., they fly right over my house.
Yeah.
But I acknowledge that there was an airport in the area, but I would have never known they would have flown the way they fly. And it's not bad because they're getting high enough by the time they get over me, but I can hear them every time they go. My question is just an acknowledgement enough?
So your property has different rights to complain than the undeveloped properties. So this is trying to say, get all this in place for the undeveloped lands, so that when they come and submit permits to the city for development, they acknowledge that the airport exists, will always exist, and that they can add traffic and louder planes. Your property is not subject to one of those because you've already developed it, and so you might be one of the properties that could join in a future lawsuit that says, hey, St. George, you built this to be let's say it's just a regional passenger carrier, and now you're running, military planes out of here. Therefore, you've harmed the benefit of my ownership in some way, right? This is the legislature trying to say, for anything that's undeveloped, let's get this in place. I don't believe there's any plan. Well, they already have military planes doing a few things there, but I think it's mostly just planned to grow as a regional, just passenger line.
So Thad, St. George has the airport, we have the approach. So how would this affect, you consider the approach like just something from the ground, like say hot air balloons or blob rockets or drones or anything like that? What restrictions would be on our citizens? Is that governed in this overlay zone, or are those things to even be considered?
So the overlay zone is a land use regulation pursuant to Washington City's police powers. And so it'll be a regulation that limits the use and the height of those lands.
Within the boundary that you've indicated?
Within the boundary. The airport covered, it touches a lot more Washington City than that map shows. But we are not proposing to impose land use regulations on all the other parts of the city. And so a good example would be hot air balloon usage. And you mentioned that. hot air operators are required to comply with federal law as it is. And so if they are licensed and properly approved by the federal hot air balloon regulations, those regulations and the airport regulations work in tandem, they'll be fine. Essentially what that means is the hot air balloon pilots will need to let the airport know where they're at and when, so that the airplane pilots and the hot air balloon pilots can work in tandem. That's essentially how it works in a real simple description. Drones are also regulated by federal law, and so they would be similar type regulation and coordination. I believe there's a greater just disallowance of drones around airports than hot air balloons.
They have boundaries, so
Because they're smaller.
they won't let the drones come in. It's not a big deal commercially wise. Like I've had to do drone flights for surveys, and you have to get permission from the airport, and they let you do it with the regulations. I do it all the time, so it's not a big deal.
They just want to know when and where.
Yeah, and what you're doing and how high you're going. And
Bottle
pretty simple.
rockets and other unregulated things like that. Bottle rockets are against state law and against Washington City Code, but I mean, we acknowledge there's a few seg millers that find those and light them off in the fields every now and again, right? And so, those, if they become a problem, will just need to be pursued through criminal citations and prosecutions.
So would it be safe to say if our citizens have a question about the future build out of this airport and the regulations, that they won't be asked of anything in their own residence on that approach? It's just, those are all governed by federal law?
Correct.
Okay.
The one thing that I find comforting about this is it does create some burdens, but also draws some bright lines. Let's say that this area just booms and St. George needs to triple the size of the airport. And we've all seen big airports, right? This one's not very big compared to those. They would have to come and buy for fair market value through like an eminent domain or negotiation process. If they wanted to triple size of that airport, it would vastly change these lines, and the city would have to come and actually pay fair market value for the lands that they have to take. And so while there's some burden here, it also does draw a nice bright line that says, hey, if you guys ever want to get bigger ideas about airports than what you've got duties to the landowners that have enjoyed living there, and you've got to pay fair market value for those.
Thad, so I appreciate that you have the proposed ordinance on the screen there, and council will be taking action on this another evening. Can I just point out one just minor clerical edit that's not material to the content?
Yep, I've already got a couple. Let's keep going.
Just on the final paragraph under use restrictions.
Dr. Shall?
You got it.
I got
I'm
it.
sorry. I shouldn't even have pointed
No,
that
you're
out,
good.
Thad.
No, the part of this is to get those. And I'm going to take that as a segue. So this is essentially just making sure you're okay with this. If you are, I guess I'd ask for a motion, and what we would do is then we would, because this is a land use regulation, it has to go through a public hearing at the planning commission, and then and a vote of recommendation, and then it'd come to the city council for adoption.
So are you wanting a motion, or are you just wanting a nod to take this back through planning commission and back to the council for a formal zone
Let's ask
change?
for, you want a nod or a motion, Drew, just to,
It's
just
a discussion?
Yeah, I see it that way too,
So
but
just
you're the attorney.
Yeah, we're not approving it as city law tonight, so just something to let us know whether you want it to go through the
good with you.
process to become city law.
I'm good with you going through the process. I hope you can make this text a little bigger next time.
I'm sure I can.
Thad, can I ask you? So it says that that the city shall adopt, where does it go? So basically, if we don't adopt something, we still have to, it seems like it's saying the same things, like if you adopt this is what you should do, if you don't adopt this is what you shall do. So either way, we'll have to enforce with or without an ordinance. Is that
That's
what I'm
exactly how I
understanding?
read it. St. George City and their attorneys have criticized Washington City for not adopting it.
I'll take this one on me. You have a little bit of an obstinate city manager, and I looked at it and I saw the same thing. And so Thad and we said, well, then let's not adopt one. We have the same rules either way. And we've taken criticism from St. George that we haven't been as serious as we should be about it. But
And
it's
our
exactly
reasoning,
the same thing. So either we do it or we don't, but we have to follow the same rules. So.
our reasoning wasn't a willingness to play in the sandbox. It was that our area was so small, and it's basically just two corners of pieces of property, that you look at floor A, B, and C, we thought we can administer this just as easily directly to those landowners as we can creating a zone in our city code and going through the public hearings. And so it wasn't that we were trying to, cast any aspersion on the neighboring airport. We use their airport. We recognize that it benefits us too.
Wonderful. Thad, well done. Thank you for the context. I think we understand that. Council, any objections to Thad and Drew running this back through the process for a formal vote, likely before the end of December?
Yep.
Okay.
I have none.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mr. Sigmiller. Item 10, a report of officers from assigned committees. Let's start with you, Councilman Belliston.
Nothing today.
Councilman Henderson.
Mayor, I don't have anything, but I am looking forward to my next tree committee meeting with Thad, because that's the best committee in the whole city.
Well, Councilman Coates.
Yeah, I got a little update on the county board, the Washington County Solid Waste Board. I mentioned last time, we're going back to the CIB board. Looks like December 5th, I'll be up there trying to get us more money for phase 3 of the project. We'll see how it goes, and I'll keep you informed.
Yeah, keep up the good work there. Councilman Ivey.
So we're, again, this time of year, it's just getting busier and busier, getting ready for the legislative session, and we had legislative policy this last week, and the one thing that they unveiled that I want to share, just part of it, is they're talking a lot about increasing housing supplies and the state plan principles, but to increase housing supply, this is what they came up with, and I'll go through them quickly. But small single-family detached units on small lots, more condos in multifamily areas, development of centers, more workforce housing in rural Utah, more opportunities for aging in place housing, and then the plan, the framework plan, collaboration over preemption. That's what the league is stressing to our legislators, that let's be a part of finding a solution instead of being told what the solution is. Holistic and regional approaches, collaboration across sectors, center-oriented development, and focus on families and home ownership. And that's the one that probably resonated with me the most, is they want to build generational wealth, and you can only do that by owning a home. And so there's some concepts coming through the SITLA bill that we're running with, that would allow SITLA land to be used for affordable housing. That's progressing. It's actually doing much better than what we thought. But the last thing I'd mention, Mayor, and of course this is your approval, but I was asked to join the water fees working group at the league. So that would help address some of the issues that Mr. Segmiller spoke about as we talk about the rates of this new reuse pipeline. This would be a study in advance of that. It's called the Water Fees Working Group, and that would be based in league leadership and some invited individuals from throughout the state.
Thank you, Councilman Ivey. Councilman Casperson.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Neither do I. We'll move on to item 11, City Manager Report.
Mayor, tonight I don't have anything to report. Thank you.
We'll move on to item 12, closed session. We do have need to go to closed session for 12A and 12B, purchase, exchange, release of property, and pending or potential litigation. I'll call for a motion to that effect.
So made, Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivey.
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
I heard a unanimous vote. We will move into closed session. Thank you, all those who are in attendance this evening.